Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to Dr. Shen. Um, at the outset, let me request you all to please turn off your microphones and turn on your camera. Today, we have with us Dr. O Faruk Shen. Dr. O Faruk Shen is a writer and researcher who has been working on ethnicity, identity, and intercultural relations over the years. Dr. Shen's research interests include minority writers, cultural adaptation, linguistics, Asian American literature, and creative writing. You're welcome, Dr. Shen.
Thank you.
We have up to 3 hours for your session. You can as long as you want to within that timeline, and you can finish it early as well if you wish. It's totally up to you and the participants. Dr. Shen will be talking on dialogue theories and practices, examples from around the globe. He is the author of, he's the co-author of the book Dialogue Theories, which I'm sure all of you have seen. A PDF copy of that, of which will be sent to everyone. So over to you, Dr. Shen.
Hello, everyone. Assalamu alaikum, namaste, merhaba to everyone watching and following today's session. As Besat mentioned, today we're going to be talking about dialogue theories and what that entails, and dialogue thinkers from around the world. I will not be talking about all the dialogue thinkers, but I will be focusing on 4 of them. Can everyone hear me well? If everyone can hear me well, I'll just start with the presentation.
Yeah, we can. There's no problem.
Brilliant. Okay. Right. Okay. Dialogue theories, what it means. Let's start with dialogue theories, the idea of dialogue theories. There are many thinkers around the world. They write about different topics. Dialogue is just one of them. There is no dialogue as a separate discipline in the academia. With the exception of dialogue studies, which has not been established as a separate discipline yet. So we have people from different backgrounds, from quantum physics to cultural studies to linguistics, who write or wrote in the past on dialogue. So not everyone is everyone writing on dialogue is from the same area or discipline, and that is a good thing, because they bring in their different perspectives on the topic, and not everyone, when they say dialogue, mean the same thing. So today's lesson, and I will just quickly start sharing my PowerPoint slides just quickly. Okay, I'm just going to from beginning. I will be talking about these dialogue thinkers, and as I said, dialogue theory means of dialogue by a thinker who may come from a different, from any of those disciplines I mentioned or more. Why is it a theory? Because when someone talks about dialogue, it's like his or her perspective on dialogue can be, proven, or maybe it's not proven yet. It's a theory. It's not, it's not something that is necessarily, applicable. So all those thinkers, when they say dialogue, we consider those as theory. And practice, we will talk about practice of dialogue of these thinkers in the next session. Right. So I will start with Karin Armstrong, and we'll go from there. Karin Armstrong, with Karin Armstrong, we find a dialogue thinker who is also a, very well-known writer, and, whose books are, popular, especially in the UK. The way we go with this is we start with some biographical information, and to get an insight into the ways that a thinker, approaches dialogue, or we can have an insight into what brought them to dialogue. Okay, so when we look at Karin Armstrong, we see a dialogue thinker who comes from a background of being a Catholic nun. So she had a very religious upbringing, and she had immense experience from there, which influenced her dialogue thinking. She had very much difficulties during her times as a nun in the convent, and she writes this is in one of her books. And you can imagine that being a Catholic nun, she was in an environment where she had a very closed environment, not much interaction with other faiths. But because she had this difficult and closed environment, she fought against this, fought inside this box, and came out of this box to be open to other faiths and other ways of doing dialogue. In fact, in her book 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life, she gives dialogue examples from Shakyamuni Buddha, Muhammad, peace be upon him, Jesus, and other spiritual leaders of the world. And all these examples she gives, she's sincere and she's genuine. She really wants to relate to those individuals' perspectives on dialogue. She not only emphasizes spiritual leaders, she also bases her dialogue on the thoughts of Socrates. Now, Socrates, we know his writings on dialogue, or his perspectives on dialogue through his student Plato, and the way Karin Armstrong emphasizes dialogue in her work is through the concept of compassion. Now, she doesn't use dialogue as much as the other thinkers, but she uses words like empathy and compassion, and talks about dialogue through these concepts. For Karin Armstrong, compassion and empathy are ways through which we can engage with others. And she gives the example of Socrates when she says there was a clear distinction between the dialogic perspective, or the dialogic method of Socrates, which was empathic and putting yourself in the other's shoes, and the fiery debates of the politicians back in the day in Athens. Socrates was living in Athens, and there was some kind of democracy, like we could say it's like a very early form of democracy. Pericles was the head of the state, and Socrates was observing all these um, people around him. He was taking students, and he was observing the politicians, how they were engaged in fiery debates, trying to beat one another in front of the crowds, trying to become the better politician, get more power, etc. Even in a democracy, back in ancient Greece, Socrates was able to make a distinction between genuine dialogue, where you empathize with the person you're engaging with, and the debate of a politician, which is not aimed to empathize with the other, or in a compassionate manner, but to beat your opponent, to find deficiencies in their argument. So Karin Armstrong uses this example to say that dialogue is more than debate. Dialogue is more than the politicians' polemic. It's about empathy. It's about understanding and feeling for the other. It's about compassion, and it's also about altruism. Now, what does altruism mean? Altruism comes from the Latin root of alter, meaning the other. And altruism means feeling for the other, and be reaching out to the other. So for Karin Armstrong, altruism is also very crucial in our relations with others. And when Karin Armstrong gives examples in her book about the Buddha or Socrates, she's not just giving examples, quotes, but also she engages with those examples. She engages with those spiritual leaders or dialogue thinkers methods, and uses them in her arguments, and creates these 12 steps. So you can already see in the title of her book, 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life, that she's got a practical side. Like, she's giving guidelines to us that with these 12 steps you can have an compassionate view on life. We will get to that later on the practical aspect of Karin Armstrong's dialogue. There's also the golden rule, which Karin Armstrong emphasizes. What is the golden rule? Do unto others as you want to be treated, or don't do what you don't want others to do to you. Okay, so this is a rule that is prevalent in almost all world religions, and Karin Armstrong takes this, the golden rule, and particularly uses the positive form of the golden rule, and says this is very crucial, very essential to dialogue. Because if we lead our lives knowing that we are not going to harm others, we're not going to treat others unfairly, we're not going to harm others' feelings, because we know that we wouldn't want to do those things to ourselves. This is dialogue and compassion for Karin Armstrong. And the golden rule, that is why the golden rule, although it is very simple. It's very crucial for Karin Armstrong's understanding of dialogue. Right. Okay, we can get back to Karin Armstrong in the question and answer session later on, or we can find some connections with the other dialogue thinkers. Now on to David Bohm. David Bohm is a quantum physicist, and he's a German Jewish thinker. He is as a true scientist. Unlike Karin Armstrong, his main area is science, hard science. But he also wrote about dialogue, and he uses the word dialogue more than Karin Armstrong. And he has a book called On Dialogue. And furthermore, he has dialogues with other dialogue thinkers or spiritual leaders, which are recorded and you can find them online, etc. He has dialogues with the Dalai Lama. He has dialogues with Krishnamurti, a philosopher from India, from South India, and he has dialogues with lots of different people. And through those dialogues, he comes to an understanding of dialogue which we call Bohmian dialogue. It is a culmination of his dialogue work. Now, according to Bohm, dialogue is a means to understanding life holistically. Now, what does holistic mean? It means on the whole, like understanding that everything is connected, understanding that human life, the life of the animals, plants, the lives of all the existence are connected. And if we understand that life is not just our individual lives, but also all the life on this globe and the universe, that is dialogue, according to David Bohm. And he comes to this understanding through two means. First, through his work in quantum physics. In quantum physics, he understood that every atom and every atom's components are related to each other. In fact, some of the components of an atom, they were inexplicably linked, like one component would not exist without the other. And sometimes those components would become one, or they would exist in two places within the atom, but at certain points they would merge or appear to merge. So looking at quantum physics, he came to the realization that everything in the universe is connected and linked. But secondly, he also learned this interconnectedness from his dialogues with the Indian philosopher Krishnamurti. When Krishnamurti says everything is related to everything, everything is linked to everything, and we are every one of us are, in some way or another linked with a common thread. As Mevlana Rumi says, if I am you and you are me, what is this talk of you and me? So we are all linked according to David Bohm's dialogic understanding. And David Bohm also says through dialogue, we can get rid of the negative aspects of humanity. What are these negative aspects? According to Bohm, negative aspects mean, thinking too individualistically, ignoring the needs of the others, and ignoring this, needs of the society. And according to him, every individual on the globe would be able to, work for the good of society and humanity. But how do we do that? Like, how do we manage to come to this kind of mindset, this dialogic mindset? According to David Bohm, this is possible by not by forcing people, but by helping people come to an understanding, helping people come to implement these changes in their lives by changing their mindset. But how can we change people's mindsets? Is it possible? According to Bohm, it is possible, but it is not that easy. Changing people's mindsets, according to Bohm, is possible if we have them meet each other, sit down around the table and talk about not something in particular, but engage with each other. And in that engagement, they come to a realization that they can think in a group. So how do we think in a group? According to Bohm, we can think as a group if we, focus on our thoughts, and we feel empathy, similar to Karin Armstrong, towards the other. And that is why in Bohmian Dialogue gatherings, no one knows the social status of the other. So, for example, a student sits next to a professor, or let's say a doctor, a physician sits next to a construction worker, but they're not told about their occupation. They're not told about their social status. So what does this achieve? This achieves a mindset where everyone realizes that none of it matters. It doesn't matter whether someone is, a doctor or a construction worker or a driver, etc. What matters is we are all part of the whole. We are all interconnected, and we are all in need of each other. And we are also one of the other. So in terms of Bohmian dialogue, dialogue is achieved when we come to a realization of this, positive mindset, that we are all related and interconnected. So in that sense, we could say that Bohm's dialogue is both science-based and spirituality-based, because he learned from spiritual leaders like the Dalai Lama, and also, based his dialogue thinking on quantum physics. It's a very interesting, perspective on dialogue. I would very much like you to read more on him, and we can talk more about him in the question and answer session. Right, without further ado, let us move on to the next thinker. Right, okay. Seyda Said Nasser. Right, Seyda Said Nasser is an American Muslim philosopher, and he's also a polymath like David Bohm. What does this mean? It means that he's also a scientist, and also a poet, a writer on philosophy. He's got different, he's got expertise in different fields, and he has been, working on dialogue for many years, and he has been engaged in dialogue with, religious leaders in the US and around the world, but also he's been engaged in dialogue with, scientists and people in the academia, and he has been writing on philosophy and in a different in the hard science for since at least the 1980s, and he's a supporter of dialogue between religion and science. Now, what does this mean? Dialogue between religion and science. How can we have dialogue between religion and science? According to Sayyid Hussein Nasser, there is a discrepancy between religion and science in today's world. He argues that in a traditional sense, there was a connection between religion and science in the many different cultures of the world, in India, in medieval uh, Christianity, in the court of um, the Andalusian, Spain. There was a connection between religion and science. What does that mean, this connection? Now, according to Nasser, science's truths are not immutable, and scientists are also ready to acknowledge that. So you can find that every other day there's a new knowledge comes about in the sciences, whether it's astrophysics or mathematics. Something new comes about. Sometimes old knowledge becomes obsolete. So science is always changing, is always improving, is always becoming something that can be very different from yesterday. Although there's a lot of things that don't change as well, but most of it is open to change. When it comes to religion, religion has certain fundamentals, and those things are like the basis, they're the tenets. And that is, those things do not necessarily change. And Sayyid Hussein Nasser argues that science was related to, finding out about the, secrets of the universe, the creation, and the especially in medieval, Islamic scientists, discoveries. There was always a push to learn about the universe because they wanted to learn more about the role of a creator, or the role of what they read in the religious texts or scriptures. How can we reconcile religion and science? And that is where Sayyid Hussein Nasser comes in, and he says scientists have become too arrogant. Scientists have started to make science, turn science into some kind of religion, some kind of cult. And that is why religion is, thrown out of the picture. So because science in general, of course, I mean, what we're talking about is, Western understanding of science as a, as standing on its own. Obviously, there are lots of Christian scientists, Hindu scientists, Muslim scientists, but the general perspective, like the general view on science, is that some of its hypotheses are treated like dogmas. And that is what Nasser opposes. he says that sometimes uh, popular scientists, they act like they are, religious leaders. They have the truth in their hands, like what they argue is taken as immutable. It's the very truth. However, he says if religion was in dialogue with science, scientists would become more humble. They would not, they would be, they wouldn't be making, turning science into a kind of religion. Furthermore, he says religion has much to contribute to science. It might be possible that we can, have new discoveries through this relationship between religion and science. And this was actually possible in the past. So we have some precedents. What are those precedents? We can see these in the discoveries of early Muslim scientists. They were inspired by spirituality. They were inspired by religion, and they made lots of discoveries. So this kind of inspiration and this kind of relationship between religion and science is what NASA is defending. He's making an argument about it. Furthermore, there is for NASA a important connection between Sufism and dialogue. Now, according to NASA, Sufism is like the main connection between, is the main connection between different religions. Now, when we say Sufism, what I mean is the esoteric aspect of religion. For Islam, this may be Sufism. For other religions, it can be the esoteric spiritual aspect of that religion. So that, he says, that aspect is the main linking point where people of that religion can relate to other religions or can make connections. How is that possible? He says that, for example, through engaging with Christianity or Christians in the West, when he went to study in the US, he realized that he had a love for Jesus in his heart, and this kind of emphasis is placed in Sufism. This this love for the prophets, love for Jesus, etc. And this kind of he made this connection through Sufism. Of course, he's talking about interreligious dialogue here. He's not talking about dialogue in general, because when we looked at Bohm, we were talking about dialogue in general, a dialogue as a means to improve society. It wasn't just interreligious. It wasn't even intercultural. It was interpersonal. It was it was something more than that. But Sayyid Hussein Nasr is more interested in dialogue as a relation, as a link between people of different faiths. Sayyid Hussein Nasr is also a proponent of perennial philosophy, and perennial philosophy is often misunderstood, or there are different explanations of it. Some people may not be directly following it, but also been influenced by it. Anyways, Sayyid Hussein Nasr has been influenced by it, and it means that all the spiritual traditions of the world are interconnected and they come from the same source. Perennial meaning constant, like there is a clear link between all the different faith traditions of the world, including the Native American traditions, including the shamanistic beliefs of Central Asia. He says he supports this view that every faith is related, and he incorporates this in his understanding of dialogue. How does this affect his understanding of dialogue? He basically engages with all people of all faiths, and he sees some truth in all those different takes on religion, and he finds that this kind of dialogue is more open and more embracing all the differences of others, or people of other faiths, etc. There's also a discussion of secularism and modernism in the understanding of dialogue that comes from Said Hussein Nasser. He's critical of modernism as impeding our connection to spirituality. He says that modern life has cut off humanity from authentic spirituality. Surely there's been some spiritual movements that came with modernism, like New Age spirituality. But he says New Age spirituality is like like a very superficial take on authentic spirituality, and that is why he's not completely opposed to modernism. He's not like saying let's take everything back to the roots, like he's not interested in that. But he says we should be able to reclaim authentic spirituality in modern life. He's interested in bringing back true spirituality. What does authentic spirituality mean? It means spirituality that is based on tradition, that is based on practice. For him, it's the Sufi, Islamic, spirituality. But he also talks a lot about Christian spirituality. Where he's very much a polymath in that sense. He also engages with Christian spirituality in his works as a Muslim. So he says that we can bring back that authentic tradition, authentic spirituality, even if we have been impeded by modern life in that sense. He's also critical of secularism, because he also believes that secularism, secular perspective on life has also sterilized our lives from religion, from spirituality and religion. And he's not again, similar to modernism, he's not completely against secular governance. He's against this mindset, against the human life being devoid of spirituality. So he's very interested in making connections with spirituality, having humanity connect with spirituality and engage with each other. Now, there's a clear difference between Karin Armstrong, David Bohm, and Said Hussein Nasser, because Said Hussein Nasser says that not everyone has to be engaged in dialogue. Like, what does this mean? Like, not everyone has to be engaged in dialogue. He's saying that there will be people, who will be very interested in engaging with people of other faiths or other traditions. But there will be other people who is not interested. They want to, they don't want to engage with other traditions. And he says that that's okay. This is the main difference between, this is one of the main differences between the Said Hussein Nasr and the other, dialogue thinkers we are discussing today. He says that if a group of people from a, faith community engages in dialogue and they make a difference and they, establish, good relations with other people of other faiths, that is enough. That is sufficient, because you're making, you're creating empathy, you're creating understanding between the people of different, backgrounds, people of different ethnicities and faiths. So that group of people who are, engaging in dialogue, that is enough. Not everyone has to do that, he says. Okay. That is Said Hussein Nasr. Obviously, there's more to him. We could talk about these thinkers for hours. That's his approach to dialogue in a nutshell. Right. Next up, we have Martin Buber. Martin Buber is another dialogue thinker from, hailing from Germany. He's a Jewish dialogue thinker. His main, contribution to dialogue is his understanding of I-you or I-thou dialogue and I-it dialogue. And he argues that dialogue should be with your whole being. Now, what does this mean? When you engage in I-you dialogue, you are becoming the other. You are, completely embracing the other. You cannot see the distinction between you and I. This is again very similar to like a very Sufi understanding, or very similar to what Karin Armstrong was saying when we need to empathize with the other. But Martin Buber, coins this term, I-you mode. When you enter I-you mode, and he also he says we can even engage in I-you mode. This in-depth dialogue with animals. He talks about this I-you mode when he engages in dialogue with a horse, and he engages in dialogue with a Christian, priest. When we engage in I-you dialogue or I-you mode, we shed our differences, we become one, and that is when real dialogue happens. That doesn't mean that we leave our, get rid of our differences. It means that we empathize so much that we become one. Now, in contrast to I-you mode, I-it mode is more impartial. It's more, the differences between you and I. It's more like the debate of the Athenian politicians. Maybe not that, on a debate level, but it's still dialogue, but it's not as in-depth, as transformational as I-you mode. And according to Buber, one of the aims of dialogue is coming to a common understanding, and coming to a understanding that we're all humans and we may have our differences, but we can empathize with each other, and we can understand each other viewpoints. For example, he talks about, as I said, a dialogue between a Jewish person and a Christian person, and a Christian person argues about the Messiah, about being Jesus, and the Jewish person says Messiah is someone else, and they have a heated argument. And when they look into each other's eyes, and they realize the humanity within each other, the heated debate goes away, and their differences melt into each other, and then they come to an understanding that despite their differences, they're all human, and they start to create, they start to empathize with each other. And he says true dialogue does not require people to be similar in any respect. And this is again leads into what we were saying, that we don't have to be the same, we don't have to become the same. And this is not the point of dialogue. Dialogue doesn't mean that we become the other, we change our beliefs. No, the opposite. Dialogue is, while remaining different, learning to understand the other, empathize with the other. Right. Now, quickly, let's look at all the thinkers and look at their similarities and differences and their definition of dialogue. Now, if we go back to Karin Armstrong, we said, his perspective on dialogue is, based. We are basing his perspective on dialogue on her book 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life, and she based her dialogue on empathy and compassion. So we could say that Karin Armstrong's definition of dialogue is compassion and altruism. So it is, if compassion and altruism doesn't exist in our dialogue, it's not dialogue, according to Karin Armstrong. How is she different from the other thinkers? We can think about this. Her perspective is not science-based, for one, compared to David Bowie. Her perspective is truly based on her spiritual experiences. So she has this background of the spiritual experience in the convent, and she reaches out to all the other people of other beliefs, and she even writes a book on the Prophet of Islam, peace be upon him, and she even engages with non-theistic traditions like Buddhism. So she has a spiritual background, and she uses that to engage in dialogue. So unlike Said Hussein Nasser and David Bohm, she doesn't have a scientist's viewpoint, but also she enriches that, she enriches dialogue by bringing all the spiritual leaders of the past and the dialogue thinkers back into the equation. And when we look at David Bohm, his is the most philosophical, if you ask me. His perspective on dialogue is the most philosophical and the most scientific in a way, because his definition of dialogue is that dialogue is a means to understanding life holistically. Obviously, these dialogue thinkers, they have different definitions within their own books. So this is just one definition, I believe, of dialogue according to David Bohm. So different from Said Hussein Nasser, perhaps, different from Martin Buber and different from Karin Armstrong. David Bohm's dialogue is more science-based, and his perspective that inspired by quantum physics, that life is holistic, that everything is interconnected, is very central and crucial to his understanding of dialogue. And when it comes to Seydo Nassa, he's a polymath like David Bohm, we could say, but his perspective is linked with Sufism, we could say. So he's different in that sense from the others. And his engagement with secularism and modernism. So he's one of the, he's the dialogue thinker that criticizes modernism, that sets him apart from the others and the other thinkers we discussed. And his definition of dialogue is more based on, spiritual links between different faiths and the dialogue between religion and science. I think he doesn't have one definition of dialogue. He may have many definitions, and one of them is the dialogue between religion and science. Finally, Martin Buber, his perspective on dialogue is more focused. He's got this I-you mode and I-it mode, and it is like very focused on this. And I-you mode is the epitome of his dialogue thinking. Dialogue for Martin Buber, we could say, is I-you mode, is dialogue with your whole being. And he emphasizes that. And so if we were to compare Martin Buber to the other dialogue thinkers, we could say, we could add that he was, although he was initially involved politically with the Zionists, with the Zionist movement, he became very critical of it later on. He became critical of Zionism. And so in that sense, we could say he was also involved in politics, at least on as a thinker. So he wrote about these things and he became critical of this political movement. So that's what sets him apart, I think. One of the things that sets him apart from the other dialogue thinkers. Right. Okay. I think the part where I, talk about these dialogue thinkers is more or less over. I've talked about 51 minutes, and we can move on to the question and answer session. I will stop sharing because there's nothing else that's left on the slides. Right, I can have your questions now, and then we can have a discussion about the different aspects of dialogue. You can ask about dialogue in general, or about any of these thinkers, if you have any questions.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Shen, very much for your presentation. We have 3 people who want to ask a question right now. First one is Shabista Naz. Shabista, please unmute your mic and ask your question.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you, Dr. Shen, for your wonderful and insightful presentation. Actually, I just want to ask, there are 2 questions. First one regarding the Bohemian experiment, which you mentioned. It seems quite interesting that the idea which he introduced, that you just sit with the other people without knowing their social status. So what I think, there are other aspects of an individual also, our skin color, our dresses, these are the symbols which without saying anything you can recognize whether the the person's whereabouts, like which religion he or she follows, or from which backgrounds he comes, even the language the person is speaking, like different accent and so. So I just wanted to know how these aspects play a role in inhibiting or facilitating this kind of engagement. That is one. And the next, related to Dr. Nasr, you talked about his interreligious, dialogue, interaction, and uh, I just want to know, like, apart from that interreligious dialogue, what is his role in intra-religious dialogue? Like, we have different factions within the Islamic, religion. So, is there any kind of work he did for engaging within the Muslim community? Thank you so much.
Thank you for your questions. Very insightful. Okay, I'll start with the first question. In terms of these visible differences that we have, our accents, the way we dress, our skin color, etc. For Bohmian dialogue, it's not, obviously in any dialogue, it's not possible to shed those differences. I mean, we cannot get rid of them, and we wouldn't want to get rid of them, because for Bohm dialogue, diversity is very important. He wants, for example, in terms of the guidance that he gives for Bohm dialogue, he says group sizes is important. It should be large enough to encompass the diversity needed for a good dialogue to develop. But it shouldn't be that, it shouldn't be the main focus. So in that sense, it's impossible to get rid of our differences, and it's not needed. Obviously, they're gonna influence our thought processes. But another guidance he gives is that we don't talk about those things, like we don't talk about our, we don't ask the other person, what's your profession, where do you come from. These are not the questions to be asked. Rather, he expects someone to start with a random question, and everyone continues with an answer to that question, and in a way moves towards a group, towards group thinking. That's what he says. So again, to recap, it's not possible to get rid of all these differences, those visible differences that we have, but he says we should not focus on them, and we should focus on the dialogue at hand, and see if we can move towards a more group thinking, more group understanding, more empathy. You know what I mean? Secondly, in terms of your question about Sayyid Hussein Nasser, I know that he has been very open, very engaging within the Muslim community. He has, at least in most of his books, he's not talking about his his sect. He's not talking about the Shia, but he's also giving examples from the Sunni world. Like from his books I read, I know he has a very empathic, perspective on the four caliphs that came after the Prophet, and he's not, in that sense, he's not a sectarian. He's not trying to push his, push a sectarian, perspective on things. So when he's writing his books, we could say that he is engaging in intra-religious dialogue as well. And people reading him, obviously, they're not really interested in his, they're not necessarily interested only in his, Islamic tradition, but also his perspective on dialogue in general. And furthermore, I could say that there's one book that he has on Shiism. It's a translation of a Shiite scholar he did early in his career. So he did indeed write about the on Shiism, which does not mean that he's sectarian. It's just his writing exposition on his own perspective on Islam. But in all the other works that he wrote, he doesn't have a sectarian outlook. So you know what I mean? At least in his writing, he's engaging maybe passively in intra-religious dialogue. He's looking at the Islamic tradition and Sufism as a whole, including all the traditions, Shiite, Sunni, and and Sufism as an umbrella over all these different schools, different traditions. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. I also want to know, he talks about the representatives. Okay, so like there would be certain people who will have the authority and they will come and meet, and then they will engage with the other religious person, or the people from the other faith. So like people, those who are suffering from on their daily basis, like different kind of hatred from the other community, in that sense, how this kind of dialogue which that would affect the normal person. So I just want to know.
Right. Okay. Well, Nasser's perspective is, as I said, is different from the other thinkers. He's very. He says that if a group of people within a community engages in dialogue, and this is fard kifaya. He uses religious term, meaning that is that fulfills that role. So when so if that fulfills that role, it says the rest of the community does not have that obligation. That doesn't mean that they're not going to engage in dialogue. That means that they don't have the same level of responsibility that a group of people within that community who engage in dialogue. Now, when it comes to that things that impede dialogue, people who are engaged in sectarianism, or people who cause who engage in with others with hatred. I think the only way we can help improve that situation is again through dialogue. So I would say that the perspective of the other dialogue thinkers who say that everyone should be engaged in dialogue in one way or another is more sound and more beneficial to every community at large, because if everyone engages in dialogue, then we will have less and less bigotry, between different people of different faiths. We can't always solve sectarian or problems or bigotry with diplomacy, with politics. The best way to solve these problems is through one-on-one dialogue, interpersonal dialogue, sitting down with the person of different ethnicity or different religion, different perspective on life, and talking with them and engaging with them and breaking down barriers. That's not gonna give us short time solutions, but in the long term, it will improve relations. It will get rid of, bigotry, because when you have this kind of dialogue, or on a personal level, your perspective changes, and the perspective of your children and the new generation changes as well. It's not an easy one. It takes time, and it's a long-term solution, but it is the one that will have the most impact. So that is one way we can engage with others, and find a solution to bigotry and sectarianism, in that sense.
Thank you.
Now, Saeed.
Hello.
Hi.
Said. I wanted to comment on Karin Armstrong, which I read about by her, Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam. Well, I guess she has book Prophet of the Modernity or something about the. I liked so publication of this book happened to like kind of coincided with like the 9/11, right? So she rather in her book she rather goes back, like how all of these problems started, right? Radicalization, fundamentalism. So he starts like by explaining which it can happen with everyone and with every religion. So she takes the example of Andalusia, right? When there was established an Islamic country. So it started there actually, from the side of Christianity. They started like openly criticizing and challenging the government there. So the same kind of events happened there back in Andalusia. So terrorizing and challenging the government. So that's it about I want to comment. And she's really nice in comparing her approach. So the golden rule, yeah, and also compassion. Her point is really nice. Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Do you want to add something to it, Dr. Shen, or do we move on for the next?
I mean, I have read his book on Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his perspectives on different faiths. Her perspectives. She's a very valuable scholar. Obviously, we can't expect her to be looking at everything from. She's going to give a unique perspective. So in that book, for example, I saw she has different takes on on things that are different from traditional perspectives, and that is fine, because she's a dialogue thinker, and she comes from a Christian perspective, which will give her a new different outlook on the lives of the spiritual leaders of different faiths. That's, I just wanted to say that, add to that.
Right. Now, Saif.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It was a very nice presentation, and I got a few a few good points about what some of the thinkers have to say about dialogue. Well, I want to comment on a few things that I would like to just give my opinion on a few things that you said about Said Hussein Nasr and his perspective on, what dialogue is. Well, recently I've, started reading a few books on, science and maybe quantum physics as well. I got a chance to read the book, A Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking, and it really, resonated with me and what I've been thinking about the world, like, for a long time. You said that Said Hussein Nasr, he said a few things like, scientists have become too arrogant, and scientists have started to, build this kind of a cult where, like, whatever they say, they're also like a, religious group where, whatever they say, or even the hypotheses that the scientists are producing are treated like dogmas. But I'm not really sure, what scientists Said Hussein Nasr is talking about in this case, because I feel like, in my opinion, I feel like rationality should, rule over any other type of thinking when, we're living our lives, because even, when religion comes into play, and when, you have got various cultures and all of that, those are the things that I feel like contribute to the divide between people. For example, like the science that I study here, like in Nepal, right? The science that I study here is exactly the same science that people study in America, or people study in, South Africa, or wherever. The science is the same, but when you look at like religious practices and religion, even being a Muslim, following the religion of Islam here in Nepal, I feel like, there are many differences between how I live my life and somebody maybe in South America, a Muslim in South America might live their lives, which, as you can see, where I'm coming from, which does contribute to a sort of divide between the way of thinking. For example, if I had to go and talk to that person and, discuss an Islam, and we'd certainly, come across a few disagreements here and there about, how we should live our lives per se. Another thing that Said Hussein Nasr also said is that modernism is a hindrance to spirituality, but I feel like it's just my opinion. I just would like to hear your comment on that. I feel like if we, strip away all of these, religious and cultural aspects, and we only stick to reason and only stick to, this sort of, how do you say, good for all kind of theory, where, everybody's good is, the maximum satisfaction for everybody is regarded as the ultimate goal, that would create a better environment for dialogue, rather than, having groups of people with so many different values and, religions and this and that come together. And I feel like if such a dialogue really does take place, then it turns into a dialogue not about, how to better the lives of people, but more about who is right in terms of, whose religion is right, or it turns into an interfaith dialogue rather than a dialogue where, people can come into a conclusion about, what's good for them in a way. I don't know if I kept the question as clearly, but I hope I just put my point across.
No, I think your questions, quite clear. Thank you. Right. Yeah. From what I understand, from Said Hussein Nasr's perspective, he's not, interested in, making religion dominant in scientific discussions, or, giving religion full reign in scientific, discoveries or research. He's more interested in creating a balanced relationship between religion and science. What does this mean? It means that he's more interested. Actually, he's very much interested in the divide between religion and science. It's as if, or the perception of the divide between religion and science. So he's basically saying that in the 21st century, there's a divide between people, not everyone, but some people take science and say this is the only way, and we don't need spirituality, we don't need religious tradition, and science will show us the way. Obviously, the roots of this thinking goes back to the 19th century, positivism. This is nothing new, but he's saying that we have to do something about this divide. Even today, for example, the new atheist movement is completely reliant on science. And it's like science will have answers to every problem. But is this true? Like from Sayyid Hussein Nasr's perspective, don't we have a soul? Like, don't we have emotional needs? Don't we have need to connect with spirituality, etc.? I'm just trying to look at it from Nasr's angle. And so he says, humankind has neglected, for example, spiritual aspects of life and abandoned tradition and spirituality. This doesn't mean everyone, but there is clearly, a group, a part of humanity that has completely, left behind spirituality and has embraced science as if it's a religion itself. You know what I mean? But I totally understand you, and I totally understand you when you say, we would have a lot of differences when we discuss religion. That is fine, and that is actually normal. Everyone, has different take. There's a lot of diversity, just like there's a lot of diversity in culture as well. But we have to be very careful. We have to make sure that religion doesn't become, a tool of politics. It doesn't become a, tool to win, over the masses or deceive the masses, for example. So in short, he's not arguing for religion becoming, like replacing science or anything. He's just saying that there should be a balanced relationship. Of course, there's going to be, there's always going to be scientists with no faith, or no faith or affiliation with any faith. There's going to be scientists, from a Hindu background, from Muslim background, from Buddhist background, etc. But he's interested in the contributions of those scientists from their spiritual or tradition, the religious angle. You know what I mean? I don't know how that can be, but we have, as I said, precedents from the golden age of, Islamic science, where scientists were engaging with Plato, Socrates, at the same time engaging with scripture and creating making new discoveries by being inspired by those things. If this becomes part of the scientific discussions, everyone bringing their own spiritual, and if this is considered valid within the scientific community, like talking, maybe creating a new subdiscipline of science, like where discussion of spirituality or religion is not, or ignored or, criticized or, seen as non-scientific, maybe we can talk about a balanced relationship between religion and science. That's my take on your question. I hope that was useful.
Can I just add a little bit to that?
Sure.
Well, I feel like science is, kind of evolving with each new generation, each new discovery and stuff like that. One thing that religion says that science doesn't, or science doesn't claim ever, is that, all right, this thing is the ultimate truth, which almost all the religions, they do that, right? They say that, okay, this is the ultimate truth and, this is the right way to do things. But science usually goes to the direction that, okay, up until now, these are the observations that we have made, and these are the results that we have gotten, and this is going to stick until and unless, somebody else comes and says, oh, you're wrong, something else has come up, and from these observations, your previous, results can be, made obsolete. So that is how, it keeps on changing. So one thing that I am still not a little bit satisfied is from the fact that science, it cannot be compared to religion in a sense that, all right, it is dogmatic or something like that. And another little question that I had was that you said not everyone can be engaged in dialogue, or only a few people in a group, or a certain group can do it. I would like a little bit more explanation on that point, because I feel like saying that statement that only a few can engage in dialogue might, tend to bring in the fact that you just said that, only a few people might be, running the show after that. For example, a few religious leaders, might get the helm of the horse, and they will be able to steer wherever they can, if like everybody is not involved. Or is it because of logistical difficulties that everybody should not be involved or should not engage, or why is it?
Okay, first let me explain, Saidu Sanna's perspective on, a group of people can do dialogue and the rest of them, they don't have that obligation. He bases on a religious ruling, actually. He says this is fard kifaya, meaning that it is an obligation on a certain group of people. For example, when a funeral comes to a mosque, it's not the obligation of everyone to pray to that person, or pray in the janazah prayer. It's just a group of people. That's the example he gives, actually. So he comes from a religious perspective. I'm not saying this is right, as I said, or I'm not saying this is the absolute truth. Obviously, this is his perspective. And there are many other dialogue thinkers who say everyone should be engaged in dialogue. That's the way forward. But then I can understand him. Not everyone is going to be specialized in dialogue. Not everyone is going to be learning, the other traditions. It's not really for everyone. Like not every Buddhist person is going to be specializing in Islam, learning or about ins and outs of Christianity. You know what I mean? Someone who is doing dialogue should know the other tradition quite well if he wants to engage in dialogue. But I mean, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about is interreligious dialogue. If you're doing intercultural dialogue or, interpersonal, you don't have to know the other person's religion. It's not necessary. I'm just saying this for interreligious dialogue, if you want to engage with the other scriptures, etc. So that's his take on, dialogue as a responsibility of a group of people. Now, in terms of, science not being absolute, obviously science does not make that claim, but that is the perception created, and popular science that majority of the world's population adheres to absolutely, has this perception. A lot of people, even if they don't claim it, see science as absolute, like see scientific hypotheses as the very truth. You know what I mean? I mean, there are different interpretations of evolution, for example, but the way that it is taught in the West, for example, it is taken as absolute truth by the millions, right? I'm not saying it's true or false or not. Obviously, we can't say it's true or false. It's not religion, okay? It's a hypothesis. It's happened or not. You know, I leave it to scientists. But you know, evolution has many different facets. Obviously, it's actually very simplistic to say I defend or support evolution or not. I'm not really. I find those arguments very simplistic. But the point stands that for the majority of world's population, science or aspects of science is very absolute. You know what I mean? And that can become a replacement of true or authentic spirituality. That's Seydou Hossein Nasr's point of view. And so I mean, I can understand that was your question, more or less, wasn't it?
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Can we have a 5-minute break? Is it possible, Besat?
Yes, yes, of course.
Yeah, maybe it would be good for everyone. Yeah, 5-minute break, and then we come back. Is that okay? All right. Thank you. Yeah. See everyone in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right, everyone. So how are you? Saif, doing good?
Yeah, of course.
Mm-hmm. Are you in Nepal, or I thought you were in Bishkek?
Yeah, I am in Bishkek right now.
Okay.
But yeah, I said that I said that because that's where I'm from. I just came here like recently, so yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, like whatever I said, I'd like to, use this break time to discuss with people who are here. I mean, what are your opinions on this thing about, the theory of Seydou Hossein Nasr? Nobody?
Can I speak?
Bezat, can I add something?
Yes, and then Madam DP, yeah.
Okay, well, I really agree to Mohabbat Saif. And I would like to add that I think it's best to keep dialogue and religion in a different thing, because more you mix and match, science and religion in different ways, because the more you mix, I think it goes in the wrong direction, I guess. This is my opinion, I guess. Because I think, the religious books, they say something else. And I think the science is the natural science. It says something else. So I think more we discuss about this, and then it contradicts, each contradicts it, like the religion contradicts this, our thing. So I think it's best to keep it in a different way, I guess.
Yeah.
Because many of the theories, by birth, I'm a Hindu, but I follow Buddhism because my father is a Buddhist, my mother is a Hindu. And I have read both the religious books, and, they don't complement each other, Whatever we read in science, the things don't support with our religious books. I mean, the two religious books which I follow. So I don't know about Quran, but with these two books, I'm sure that they don't go hand in hand. So I think it's better to keep both away. So that's it. I just wanted to add. Thank you.
Mohammed Saif, can I say something? And Meenakshi, to you also. Of course, I've seen more seasons and celebrations than you. You all are kids of mine, you know, like, and I have struggled for last 35 years trying to bring in commonalities between two religion, and ultimately I'm sorry, I beg to differ from you. I believe that religion is extension of science. If you look at it from that point of view, whatever the books were written, whenever they were written, whichever era they were written, they were contextual at that point of time. They were contextual at that point of time, I believe that. And people who wrote the books because things were not okay in society at that point of time. I don't know, you have not read Quran, Meenakshi, but I would like to tell you that in the Islamic belief, we have two major festivals. One is we fast 30 days and then we celebrate, Eid ul Fitr, in which we have Sivai and other things. And there is another major festival which is known as Eid ul Adha, in which we go to perform Hajj, and those who don't go to perform Hajj sacrifice an animal here. And we have been criticized for this, for taking away the lives of the people and blah blah and whatever of the animal, and it's not correct. And especially, sorry to use it, in a staunch Hindu follower region, ahimsa and all is being doused upon us. If I can use the word with this thing of petrol also, it's okay just to ignite ourselves. Now you try to understand, I don't know whether anybody has paid attention to this. Prophet we are talking about, because prophet was the last messenger sent by God. The festival that we celebrate in the name of Eid Zuha is a prophet, basically a prophet which is accepted by Muslims. And Islam was established somewhere in the 7th century. We are talking about a prophet which was 2,300 years prior to Prophet Muhammad. So my whole question to the dogmas and the godmens are, why is it that we celebrate a festival in which a prophet Abraham and Ismail that we are talking about is about 2,300 years before, which means technically, scientifically, we are not talking about Islamic religion, because Islam was established by Prophet Muhammad. So if Islam was established by Prophet Muhammad, why are we celebrating something that was prior 2,300 years before Prophet Muhammad established the Islamic religion? There comes science. Now the science is that Islam, the Quraysh tribe, took over the place of Kaaba because we had a geographical wonder there, which is known as Abe Zamzam, a well which gives you 5 horsepower water 24/7, 365 years of the day. So those who had the control of water in a desert, semi-arid desert region had a lot of power. So if you look at scientific point of view, I believe that religion is next to science. A simple theory in Islam: whenever anybody comes, please offer water. Why? Because it developed in a region which was desert. Water was the most essential thing, and it is science. It's basically science. You say science and religion are two different things. I think science and religion are the same, only the way yes, if science can change as far as the new theories are concerned, okay, then religion also should change. The problem is that religion does not change. It is still 640 for Islam. So you have got Burjul Arab, the tallest building in the world, which has changed. You have got swanky cars. You have got what you say, this thing, some Dolce and Gabbana abayas to wear, but you don't give women the right to vote. That is the problem. So the issue is that as science changes, had the religion also taken a little bit of change, I think things would have been better. That is what that's my take. In fact, even in Hindu religion, if you look, so many things that you do, ahuti, the yagna you do in the evening. Every yagna in the Hindu religion is done in the evening. What do you offer in it? You offer ghee, you offer kurmura, you offer hay, you offer wet wood. What does it create? Fumes. What does it do? Fumigates. How does it help? It does not allow the insect to come into your house. That's why all the yagnas are done after sunset. I have seen all the weddings happening in Uttar Pradesh, which is my hometown, in the evening. So basically, I think I'm not saying anybody else has to believe, but I believe religion and science are same. The only problem with the religion is that it doesn't budge from what it is. Okay, and that is why there is a lot of problem with the people, with other things, with problems that leads to war and displacement and destruction. If people try to understand religion in a better perspective, I think it is more or less science. I believe that. I've got 10,000 examples to say how Islam and science are so very closely associated with each other. Thank you. That's my take on that.
Thank you, Sabiha, madam. Dr. Shen is back, so I think you wanted to listen to him. If you have one, please.
Yeah, Dr. Shen, I want to ask, can I put it this way, if I'm not being very audacious, that scientists are too arrogant? Are godmen not arrogant? They are not
sure.
arrogant. I just want to ask, they are so arrogant that if you come to sit down with them to do dialogue, they try to shun away. They don't want to have dialogue. Okay. They are almost, they want the whole power. They want monopoly of religion. And they don't want any argument to peep into that. I want to give you one example. Once upon a time, when I was very young, I'm talking about, of course, I was young once upon a time. I was a young girl. And I was applying a nail polish, at that point of time, a bubbly girl going to college. And my father had a friend who was ulama, he was a scholar, and he happened to come in, drop in at my house, and I was applying, like nail polish. And he told me, what you're doing is un-Islamic. I said, how come? So he said that in Islam, applying nail polish is haram. I said, okay, I want only 3 answers for this. Number 1, where it is written that nail polish is haram, because nail polish was discovered in 1903, and Quran was written in 10th century. So they cannot write before hand ki nail polish will be discovered and applying that will be. Second, if nail polish is haram, then all the Muslim countries like Afghanistan, Arabia, Dubai should not sell nail polish. You go to Dubai, you go to Kuwait, you go to Oman, you see complete thousands of square feet of shops which sell only nail polish. And number 3, I understand nail polish uses alcohol. That's why people say you should not use it. So that amount of alcohol is used in almost all cough expectorant, whether it is zeet or waterberries or something. So you mean to say all the Muslims should die not taking the medicine because it has got alcohol? So the thing is, the religious people and government don't engage into intelligent dialogue because they are scared that they would lose it, and they will have no answer to it, So that is the problem, that aren't government too arrogant? They also don't. And second is that, yes, I believe that science and religion are very closely associated. You give me any religion, I'll find out different points where science can be proved through it. So that is wonderful. But then people who are scientists also are not believing in their faith. In Hamare yahan in India, if somebody has to launch a rocket, they will find a shubh muhurat, they'll find a shubh time, and then they launch the rocket. So hilarious it is that you are going to say that God ne rocket nahi banaya tha. God did not make rocket, we made. So we have to say, look at the temperature, the air, the sun, the whole weather, and then launch rocket, not see what religion has said. So I don't know why dialogue is not there in the realm of religion. There has to be there. Please react or say, give me your opinion about it. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. I totally agree that people of religion, religious leaders can be very arrogant as well. I was just conveying Said Hussein Nasser's opinion on scientists. If you ask my opinion, obviously, yes, it's very clear that a lot of religious leaders are very arrogant and close to dialogue. And that's the point of dialogue. We have to open ourselves up to be able to engage in, dialogue with others. In terms of your, point about religion and science being very similar, I agree. Obviously, there's been a lot of changes in world faiths as well. Christianity in day one is not Christianity now. Islam, at the onset of Islam, is not completely unchanged from that time. It's the fundamentals, the basics that do not change. But a lot of, we add our cultural traditions, and also, we also adhere to scientific discoveries. How do we do that? We use smartphones to know the direction of prayer. We use this smartphone again application to know the time of prayer. Did they use that back then? No, they just used to look at the sun. So we incorporate science into our religious practice. So in that sense, yes, religion also adapts to the contemporary world, and as much as it adapts, it remains, relevant. As much as it stays backwards, and not really adapting to the times without changing the essentials, because without those essentials, it wouldn't be that faith or religion, it would be something else. So without making those changes, it just becomes something that is, that doesn't respond to the changes in time, and that's not really healthy or helpful. Like, not giving women right to vote, that kind of thing. It's just yeah, it's not something that is dialogic, let's say. It's not something that is true to human nature. We all need, spirituality. We also need, science to be able to get on with our lives. So we need to adapt to the times, I think. And that's when Nasser says scientists can be arrogant, he's not writing off the possibility that religious leaders can be arrogant. That is a big problem in today's world, that religious leaders, Muslim religious leaders, as an example, they can be very close to dialogue. That is why we're talking about Sayyid Hussein Nasser, and there are many other examples around the world. Not that, those well known are very few, obviously, but there are some people who talk about spirituality and dialogue, who are from, Muslim, who give a Muslim perspective, who are open to dialogue. So it's not everyone, but the popular ones, those who use populism. It can be political leaders, it can be religious leaders. They're not very open to dialogue, and they just want to gain power. So I totally agree on that point.
Thank you, Professor Shen. It was nice to know. My only, I will just like to add a few things. Just one thing is that why isn't dialogue there in the realm of religious, discussion? We don't want to discuss anything. We don't want to change anything. Saudi Arabia gave women's voting right in 2015. Come on, it's a joke. You want to be the superpower of Hajj and everything, and you don't want women to get equal rights to vote. To when Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam wife was a trade woman, she was elder to him, and she was there in the bazaar deciding who will work for him and who will not work for her. In a country like that, you don't allow women to vote. You don't allow them to drive a car, and you want to develop Saudi as a most romantic place that all the Muslims should get attracted and come. How is it possible when 50% of population is being kept away from the mainstream? Do you think there has to be any dialogue beyond that? And still you behead people, still you have no mechanism of correct justice being delivered to them. this is obnoxious as far as religion is concerned. I'm talking about that. Science, oh, you'll find everything has changed. The whole Hajj procedure has changed. How my grandmother did Hajj and how we are doing Hajj is absolutely different. All scientific amenities, ACs, fan, the head cover, the buses, the aeroplanes, the five-star hotel, that you have changed. Why can't you change the main, the main seed or the main idea of religion? So we have to come to a dialogue table. It's high time. We must come, and I agree with everybody. All four thinkers that you said that spirituality is the crossroad of meeting all religions. Agreed, 100%. So when you come to spirituality, the other rituals are just taking a back seat, and spirituality is in the front. So that's wonderful. All the four thinkers, I think, have given a wonderful message through their writings that come to the table of spirituality, leaving all your differences of religious traditions and superstitions behind, and let's talk humanity as a main goal. That is what has been said. Thank you very much. Of course, I would say, Nasser, I did not read so much. So thank you very much for introducing him. And probably I'll read a little more about him in later days. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Right. Do we have more questions, or something you would like to discuss, or
There
anyone?
are more questions actually.
All right. Oh, I didn't check the chat option. Sorry.
Oh yes, because people also write to me on WhatsApp, so I take note.
Okay, sure. Please keep me updated. Yeah.
Right, I will. Madam Deepthi Raghavendra, I think you wanted to say something. If you want.
Thanks, Besa. No, actually, I was just wanting the conversation with Saif was going on. I think it's kind of Professor Zabiha has given a wonderful, and understanding of it. Like, I think we have to just
Voice is cutting off a bit.
From a little bit of very dogmatic, we will come together. Yeah, I think it's very unstable, so I'm not able to put it across. Please continue.
Okay, all right. Then Urusa Mushtaq, please.
Good evening, sir. It was really wonderful listening to you. I have one confusion, one observation, and a piece of information. So my confusion is that from my own reading of Martin Buber, how I understood his concept of I, it, and I and thou was that he was trying to put forth a concept of intersubjectivity, like the idea of other awareness, where you try to understand the other as the other, like by becoming the other. But you very specifically mentioned that a dialogue does not, like from Buber's point of view, does not mean that you have to become the other. So I was very confused because my entire understanding of Buber was just like it took a 180-degree turn. So I do not know how to go about it. And another thing that I actually wanted to say when Saif was talking was that there was one interview of Professor Nasser that I read some time back. I cannot recall when, and I don't exactly remember the vocabulary that he used, but there were few things that I remember, and I think it stuck with me for a very long time because I found it to be very poignant. Was that he says in that interview, if you want to read it, I can probably find it somewhere, was that he says that at one point of time, each religion was a world into itself. Like there was no world beyond it. And there were very few instances in this world where other worlds would also come into that world. And he gives the example of Kashmir. He says how an indigenous religion, Hinduism, met another world of Sufi Islam. Right. And then he says another thing, that the mistake we commit is that we equate pluralism, religious pluralism, with relativism. Like we try to see religion relatively, ki mine is better and yours is not better. And one very important thing he says is that atheism has actually given us a very good ground to develop inter-religious and interfaith dialogue. Because in a world which has been bereft of a spiritual worldview, religion has come to see each other as allies. Like we've seen religion is coming to see each other as allies against a worldview where spirituality has no place. So that was something I wanted to say to Saif and to Sabiha, ma'am. Ma'am, nail polish is not prohibited because of its alcohol content. It's prohibited because of issues of permeability. If you're
So
putting
if
on,
I do a wazoo, and
yeah,
put the nail polish and then it is
yeah.
permeated forever, what is the problem in doing that? Why should we
No,
not?
that's your personal choice. That's your personal.
So,
If you don't
so,
want it
so,
to, that's if you
a
don't.
religious head cannot tell
If
me how should I put my nail polish. My
if
only
you don't want, if you don't want it to permeate, no. But there are, I think there would be people who would also agree by saying that they don't want to do the wudu. It's their personal
no.
choice.
I will do tayammum. I will use mud. It's okay.
That's it. You can use mud, you can do tayammum, you can do anything that you want.
It's
Nobody has
okay.
imposed anything. But as far as saying that it's because of the alcoholic content, and if
I
we are
only said
saying that,
that was my argument with that ulema. It doesn't mean what I'm saying is a gospel truth. What I'm saying, I argued with the ulema. Probably you are saying that it uses alcohol as a base. Spirit is not perfume. That's why Muslims also put ether and not perfume. The whole idea is that only alcohol. The base.
alcohol content may be one. I mean,
Yeah,
if you
so
are,
that's
I wouldn't. I mean, obviously you have more knowledge than I do, but alcoholic content would not be the reason, because alcohol, then as you said, is also used in medicine. So you cannot tell a person go die and you can't have serotonin or anything like that because it has alcohol. So that just takes a backspace. Because if we are considering the cosmetic industry,
Your voice got cut off. We can't hear you.
I'm so sorry. Where
Okay.
did I skip? Yeah. So right now the cosmetic industry, your people are paying thousands of dollars to use vegan cosmetics. So there's no alcohol in vegan cosmetics. There's not even any non-vegetarian element into it. So that just takes a more or less a back seat. So it's all about, I think, like that's my understanding of it. It's about permeability. That is also like very basic science. In elementary level science we study. But then obviously that's your personal issue. If you don't want to do wudu that way, you want to do tayammum, you want to do something else, that's everyone's personal choice. But yeah, that was my opinion. Thank you. So please do clear my confusion about Buber. I don't know. I mean, my understanding has changed. Yeah.
Thank you. I will do that. Could you please remind me which thinker you were talking about when you said, atheism was a ground for dialogue? Who
Oh,
was
that was an interview of Professor Nasser that I had read some time back. So he had said that atheism and a world which does not have a spiritual worldview has actually united religions as allies. It has given a ground for interfaith dialogue. So I found that very interesting. How, like, I did not, because that whole interview was basically asking him about his opinion on religion. And I actually did not think that Professor Nasser was very rigid about certain things, but he actually is very rigid about certain things, because the entire interview goes on with a lot of scope and space for dialogue, but then I think the interviewer gets that out of him. And I think all of you, specifically Saif, I think you should probably read that interview. It's a very good interview. He really brings out a lot of good points. And he actually says that science resorts to mere quantification. It's quantification that we are giving a precedence over transcendence. We are completely denying the existence of transcendence. And while denying the existence of transcendence, we are denying an allyship with other religions, which is causing us more harm than it is causing us any good. And science is not be able to serve any of its purpose. So I think, yeah.
Right. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I didn't know about that interview. That's why I asked. In terms of Martin Buber, when I said, if you become the other, I actually was rephrasing what Martin Buber was saying about IU mode. He says about IU mode that you embrace I embrace you as a whole. Like I embrace you as my whole being. So the other person is not a separate object, because that's I-it mode. So if I embrace the other person as a whole, and the other person is not a separate object, what happens? You become the other, but you are still different. You know what I mean? It's like in quantum physics, the two elements of the atom, they're separate, but they're also they also merge. They're also the same. So it's so I'm not saying that you completely change and become the other person. What I mean is, in IU mode, you embrace the other, and you don't see the other person as the other, but you by embracing the other, you do it with your whole being. So you experience the other person's, perspective. You know what I mean? But in it mode, the other person is a separate object, and you explore that person's qualities. You gain knowledge about that person, and it all happens, according to Buber, it all happens in the mind. So that is the difference. So if I'm sorry if I didn't make it very clear first time, but I think we're saying the same things more or less. About the Sayyid Hussein Nasser interview, yeah, that is very interesting, and I think the reason he says that atheism became a ground for dialogue is that before that, probably every religion, because every religion has a claim to truth, they were not very eager to engage in dialogue. But with a person of no faith, it is very easy to engage in dialogue with every tradition, with every person of faith. So that eased the dialogue for people of faith as well, I guess. So that is my understanding of Sayyid Hussein Nasser's statement in that interview. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, sir.
Mushtaq Sikandar.
Yeah, good afternoon. Thank you for your enlightening lecture, and particularly about the proponents of dialogue. My question is related to dialogue itself. That do these thinkers, as you stated, that Sayyid Hussein Nasr and others, they believe that this dialogue is a farz kifaya. But presently we witness that violence is committed and conducted by those who belong to the masses. So, how will this dialogue percolate down among the masses? Because we witness that there is sectarianism, there is communal violence, and that is being perpetuated by politicians and others who are maybe not elite but mass kind of leaders. So, can't this dialogue theory be taken out from the academia and elite kind of conferences related to intra-faith and interfaith dialogue, and how to basically make it more pragmatic and practical when it comes to present day problems, and particularly problems that are baffling the masses, instead of confining the dialogue just to academia and conferences only. So have they got a perspective, or is it just only a few people will have this privilege of understanding the religion and then doing the dialogue among themselves? Because we have experienced that mostly this interfaith dialogue is conducted by scholars of different religions, and common people are again left at the mercy of politicians and other vested interests who use them for violence. So, is there any kind of a practical or pragmatic kind of a model through which this dialogue process will be brought down among the common masses, so that the differences and the violence will go down? So that's my question.
Right. Thank you, Mushtaq, about for that question. Very, very relevant. I think the way to make dialogue a more, more prevalent among the masses is to have them engage in dialogue through, education from the young ages. If we could, for example, if hypothetically a country includes dialogue as a lesson in its curriculum from the primary school up till university, that would be a good starting point, and that would be like teaching kids about how they should be open to a culture of dialogue. That would be very useful, like, teaching them that there are different, people of different ethnicities, different faiths in the world, and it's beyond a class of religious studies. It's more like teaching them a culture of dialogue. If we can't do that as part of a national curriculum, if it's not, let's say it's not implemented, we could do it through cultural centers, through dialogue institutions, where we invite pupils from different levels, and we have seminars about dialogue, about how about the need to engage with others and to understand the other, to empathize with the other, that we're all human regardless of religion or ethnicity, skin color, etc. That would be a good starting point. In fact, in London, there were a few initiatives where pupils, from middle school and high school used to come together, and there would be, talks on dialogue, and that was very good initiative, I think. So to recap, I think we should start from the young ages, have young people to learn about how to engage in dialogue regardless of religion. It's about interhuman relationships, being open to this kind of dialogue. Get out of your box, don't just mingle with people of your own religion or ethnicity. Also make connections with other people that will open up your mind. Don't be afraid of dialogue, of changing your perspective or anything. You need to, if you have confidence in your own tradition, you don't need to be afraid of other traditions, etc. So this would be a good place to start to engage in dialogue, because otherwise, as you said, it remains a very elite kind of dialogue. It remains a very academic dialogue that doesn't go beyond university doors, that doesn't go beyond that elite group of people. That is perhaps also very precious, because those people in the academia may have may be very visible in society, and they may offer their perspective on things from a dialogic perspective, and hundreds or thousands of people are going to listen to them. That's also very beneficial to society. But we have to also go the grassroots way as well. And so we have to find ways to engage in dialogue. And I think the In Dialogue Foundation has a lot of good work. They do a lot of good work in terms of how to get the dialogue more across to the society at large.
May I add something? Yeah.
Sure.
If you don't mind. So, as Mr. Dr. Aslandoğan, I guess, mentioned, like, if you remember, civic engagement, yeah? So, I think the Hizmet movement schools are like more practical in this regard. So you don't have to, like, in my point of view, you don't even have to call it something, yeah? You don't have to give it a name. Just bring people together, let them just engage with each other. We don't have to call it something. When they know, when they see each other, yeah, So they will. So there, the first, again from Mr. Aslan Doğan. So when people come together from the professional point of view, like under a certain club, right, engineers club or whatever. So their first identity there is engineers. Yeah. Later, the other identities come up, but first approach is like humanity or engineering. Later they come together, so the barrier is there is no more barrier. Yeah, they engage with each other, so they come to know about their common interests, common views first. Then, so if we just bring people from, as you said, a young age, without their parents, their generation's prejudice, this will it will go by itself. So it doesn't have to be called like. Of course, there should be some knowledge background, but the most important point from my experience is just bringing and like engaging people with each other so that they know each other. First from the point of humanity, so without prejudice. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Soki Dilo. I think there are there are lots of examples. I mean, not maybe on that scale, but we will talk about in the next session. For example, Karin Armstrong also has an initiative where they have schools in different parts of the world called compassion schools, where they have a special curriculum. They teach, you know, dialogue, compassion, etc. So they're really dialogic, you know, initiatives that we need around the world that will, you know, teach young people from a young age about, you know, being compassionate towards others and, you know, accepting everyone as you know, for their common humanity, not just for what they believe in or, you know, their ethnic background. Thank you. Any other questions? Do we have any other things to discuss?
Yeah. Hi, sir. Thank you so much for your lecture. So I have like a lot of thoughts in my head, but I would just try to put it out simply. So, sir, when we talk about science and religion, so there is like this discipline which has emerged in the 20th century called philosophy of science. And it really talks about that how every theory, in order to be claimed to be scientific, needs to be falsified also. You know, there has to be that space, what Popper talks about falsification, that there is a possibility of refuting or even denying that it's possibly the truth has changed with time. So, you know, when we talk about science, it was just making me think that even if we look at the scientific discoveries of the 20th century, we know that it has potentially created very destructive aspects to the humanity as well. Say the Hiroshima bombing, or even the rise of the armaments and weapon. These are all product of scientific rationality or mind, not perhaps thinking. You know, so I was just thinking that how religion and science are so elemental to each other, and perhaps it can create some sort of a check and balance. And even if we look at in what we say a religion which is more about subjectivity, which is more about the intangibles, which is not so empirical. So maybe the bridge is culture, art, literature, and that is the space where science and religion both thrives. Because it's taking me back to the thought of that even so many scientists, you know, like Paul Ricoeur and so many, they talk about that we need to have that vision of suspicion, of doubt, you know, which not doubt in that sense, but doubt in a very scientific sense, or doubt of a hermeneutics, where there is a possibility of interpretation. And whereas in religion, we see a very fixed interpretation, or even, like how science also doesn't operate with interpretations. It's so very rigid. So I was just thinking that, whether science or religion, maybe they are the two aspects of the same coin called life. And there has to be the common ground of emancipation, which comes with the changes, which comes with the possibility of maybe getting rid of what was old and it's not fitting the time. So maybe religion also needs to has a dimension of evolution to it. It's not something very fixed. I'm talking in terms of basically the philosophical grounding of science and religion both. Yeah, so I don't know, like, just thank you if you can reflect on this.
Thank you for your valuable contributions. Maybe I can add a few things to that. Thank you for bringing up philosophy of science. It's important that we put science to scrutiny, just as we put, we need to put certain practices of religion to scrutiny. And philosophy of science is a very good instrument of that, for that. And to be able to, tell what is, what aspect of science is still relevant and what aspect is not, it's outdated, etc. Now, in terms of whether religion evolves like science, it is a relative, it's a subjective. I can only give a subjective answer, because on the one hand, religion evolves a lot and adapts to the times. On the other hand, it doesn't evolve because it has certain fundamentals that do not change. But it is, I can easily say that doubt and interpretation had a huge role in the discoveries of Muslim scientists in the medieval ages, because if they didn't question, they wouldn't be able to make such discoveries, and they were not afraid to to think outside the box. And they realized that religion is not just dogma. There was also a lot of things to to question, and through those questions they created new new discoveries. So there will always be people who will view science as rigid and unchanging, not maybe actual scientists, but people in society who cling on to science as if it's a religion. Positivism was a movement in the 19th century which had immense impact on society, on different human societies, where a new group of people emerged who completely shunned spirituality and religion, and saw science as the sole answer to humanity's problems, including its needs. So science has all the answers. That was positivism. And so we have to, as you said, science and religion has to work with each. As you said, science and religion could be seen as the two sides of the same coin. Obviously, there are clear differences between science and religion, in my view, but there are similarities as well. They have to work together to to be able to balance each other out. And I totally agree when you said arts, culture, these aspects of life are also very crucial, that complement our outlook on life. Without arts, science is just numbers, and we fail to see the aesthetic in the universe. There is an aesthetic aspect of the universe which we can express through arts, and there's culture. Without culture, we become, very much like, we lose our identities. We become very much like robots, without any distinguishable features, without any, cultural traditions. Religion also suffers because there are, arguments that we have to get rid of culture. That is completely, I think that is completely wrong, because culture is part of our identity. And in fact, religion embraced cultural traditions that are not harmful to human society, because if we shun culture, we also destroy our identities. So we could, maybe to recap, we could say we need science, spirituality as religion, arts and culture to lead holistic lives. Without any of these, we have an imbalance, and that's a very those four things: spirituality, religion, arts, and culture. They're also great portals to different, to dialogue with different people of different persuasions, because every society on earth has a different take on art. Every society on earth have different culture. So they're also great, means to engage in dialogue, I think. So thank you for your comments and feedback.
Ziaul Hassan.
Yeah. Thank you, Doctor, for your nice presentation and introduction to these things about dialogue, because except David Bohm, all things are new because of my different academic background. But for fantastic presentation and to know about thinking on different aspects of dialogue. Actually, I think my question is somewhat asked by the, but what actually I want to ask you is that discussed about the Syed Hussain Nasr philosophy regarding dialogue. So, and tell us that his thoughts and belief is that there is some balance between dialogue and there is religion and science. But there is one contradiction, because I, as a science student, I just think about that. There are points where the religion contradicts science and science contradicts religion. There's one famous theory of related to evolution science by Charles Darwin. So these theories are very true to the things said by different religion, in particular to this. So in that case, I don't know what Syed his perspective about that, but if he affects something particular to that aspect, then I request you to just share with me. And if he didn't discuss about that, then I want from you to have your opinion on that. Means in case of between these two things, how to establish dialogue in such case. And I have one more thing to say to the that Sabiha has told. So, with due respect to her and her seniority and her knowledge, that I don't know in what respect she said that every religious book by someone. So if she is also included Islam in that, then I don't think so. Islam and every practicing Muslim, as she is also practicing Muslim, that the Quran is written by someone, some person. So I don't agree with her if she said that it's written by some person, as she commented. And one more thing that she said that Islam is just came into existence after Prophet Muhammad. So this is also the thing that what I, as a practicing Muslim, believe is not the because Islam is the thing. Islam, the literal meaning of Islam is submitting to, and if the every messenger will came sent by the Allah to guide the public towards the right path, which to God. So Islam is not just arise to after Prophet Muhammad. It's a very old religion it's promoted by different prophets. So she discussed about actually Eidul Adha and all that. Said that these things that the Islam just came after that, and so I on a very rational note, I just point out these things. And one more thing that she said that in particular to science, Islam, religion is beside the science. She said. I'm not talking about other religions. I am a Muslim, so I'm just taking into consideration about of Islam. So it is now proved that the many things which are given in Quran is now many years after are proved by the scientific. So these things that this shows that religion is somewhat complete. That you also said in the Sayyid Hussain perspective, that something fundamental. It's not changing as compared to the science, which is ever changing. Any new thing can be happened in it. So we can take the example of Kepler's law, and the things which is given in the Kepler's law is already being explained in Surah Yasin Sharif, given in the Quran. So there are other examples also there. So we cannot the religion is beside the science. So these are the few I want to share with all of you because we have a very diverse audience, diverse group of people who are discussing on this platform. So that's all. Thank you.
Ziaul Hussain, can you repeat your question about Sayyid Hussain Nasser? Because
okay.
your voice was cutting off.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Is my voice coming clearly now?
Yes, it's better now. There's some background noise, but it's better.
Okay. I will slowly. So my question is that as per the Sayyid Nasr, I think that there is a balance between science and religion, right? So we often found that there are some contradictions between science. So, and at the time of contradiction means their science, religion, or religion contradicts science. What is the thinking or philosophy of Sayyid Nasr in that scenario? And if he told in his literature or something that is about the dialogue, it is not given, it is not discussed by him, then I want your opinion for that.
Okay, thank you. I think I understood your question. Let me, please correct me if I'm wrong. So you're saying religion and science contradict each other in some aspects. And what does Sayyid Nasser say about this? Or, you know, you ask in my opinion, is that right? You gave the, okay, you gave the example of evolution, yeah? If I remember correctly the first time. So
yeah. I gave the example of evolution theory, right?
So evolution theory by Charles Darwin. As I said before, I mean, evolution theory is not just, you know, one abstract theory. There are very different sub branches now, because it didn't just stop with the Charles Darwin's book. So, but I'm afraid I haven't read a book by Sayyid Nasser where he discusses the evolution theory. In terms of any other contradictions between religion and science, Sayyid Hussein Nasser's position is that religion has certain truths which we believe in, right? And those truths, from each religion's perspective, are immutable. For example, you know, Abrahamic religions, you know, claim the existence of God. You know, Buddhism can have its own truths, or any other religion. So the point stands that while religion has its truths, science has its hypotheses and, you know, and proven theories, right? So, but there's also the thing that religion and everything that we take as religion is not considered the absolute truth. There are things that that were related over the centuries, like the whole literature called Israeliyat in Islam, right? Things, narrations that came down to us through oral history in dialogue with the Jewish faith. They are questionable and they are questioned, right? They're not necessarily complete truths. So, for example, if something, scientific truth, is contradicted by a narration from the Israeliyat literature, then science is definitely gives, well, let's not say definitely, but scientific answer is more reliable than that mythical, or mythical narrative from Israeliyat literature. You know what I mean? But if a scientific theory is, you know, gives an argument that says that God, you know, cannot exist because everything is created on its own, obviously science is not really, I mean, Western science is not really trying to create these kind of arguments. It's popular science that gives such arguments. So let's say if a popular science has that kind of argument, then from an Abrahamic point of view, the truth that God exists would stand in comparison to that theory from a religious person's point of view. So there will definitely going to be contradictions. So we cannot avoid them. But the important thing is to have a healthy dialogue between religion and science. Wherever there's these contradictions, everyone should be able to agree to disagree. You know what I mean? So a scientist will keep, you know, have his own opinion. A person of faith will say, I believe in this and that, and that's a belief. You know, it's not science. So religion and science, in that aspect, are different. So each respect each other's opinion on that respect, and that's how it can work out, I believe. All right. I hope that answers your question somewhat.
Vishal Prasad.
Thank you.
Vishal, are you there? Okay, I don't see him. Maybe this problem with his internet. So Urusa Mushtaq wanted to say
Am I
something.
audible?
Please. Vishal, you there?
Hello.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Vishal, go ahead.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, you
Yes,
are.
we can hear you now.
Yeah. So my question is from the practice point of view. So first of all, I would like to thread a couple of thoughts from and then I will articulate my question. So you made a couple of said a couple of things. Number one, you said that apart from the community, be it scientific community or the religion community, engage on the behalf of the whole, right? And the second thing you said that there is a kind of arrogance from both the end that we have been seeing through the historical perspective. Like religions have always been hostile from science because they have said the things otherwise. We have seen the execution of Galileo Galilei and others, and we have on our side like Dawkins who equally argue even in the same hostile arrogant fashion. So my question is that when such kind of debates happen, a debate is essentially not a dialogue, but it's a kind of a conversation, we can claim it, right, within the dialogue theory. So my question is that how that hostility, how that arrogance, how can be mitigated while when there is a conversation which is going on, like a TV debate is going on where people like Dawkins are arguing about religion and science and the philosophy around it, and where millions of people are watching it. So it's a question from the perspective from the practice point of view. And one interesting observation I would like to make, there is an anthropological study, a book published called Golden Bough, and most of the students of literature and anthropology, sociology study because it explores magic, rituals, and comparative literature. You said a very wonderful thing in the beginning that all the things are related, all the religions are related, and the same claim is substantiated in that book also, where they are saying that if you look at the comparative literature of all the religions of the world, be it Islam, Abrahamic religions, or the Hindu religions, they are talking about the idea of great flood. And the reason that the book is expounding is that because they flourished on the banks of the great civilizations, that is why they had the same experiences, and that is why they have the same kind of literature and mythology. So that's a wonderful way to establish a dialogue among all the religions, that what we have common, see how we have, there's a metamorphosis point of view that we need to see. If you look at the phenomena like lightning, so the religion has its own way to describe it, and science later on got its own way to describe it. We saw the personification of the phenomena of lightning in the form of Zeus in Greek and Indra in the Indian mythology. So these are my observations regarding the commonness of the religion and the science, where we can establish a dialogue and talk about it. And the first one is a question where I want to ask that how this arrogance and how this hostility from both the ends can be mitigated from the practice point of view when we are having a dialogue, discussion, or conversation, or debate, whatever you say.
Right. Thank you, Vishal. It's a very, very important question, and thank you for your feedback and comments. How can you mitigate it? I think we can first look at past examples. Religion and science weren't always hostile. Okay, there were times when there was a scientific community which was not hostile to religion. I mean, in there's also, we can also look at interfaith, you know, there was instances in history. For example, in the history of Indonesia, there was a time when Hinduism, Buddhism existed peacefully, and then Islam came, and then Muslims and you know, Hindus kept on living, you know, peacefully. And there's also the example of the Islamic Golden Age, where the, you know, Muslim scientists, they were not hostile to religion, and in fact there were some scientists who criticized, or you know, who came with new theories that were not in line with religion, like Averroes and Al-Farabi. They had their own understanding of prophecy, their own understanding of prophethood, their own understanding of the intellect, which was different from religion. But they were not shunned because of that. They were not, you know, they were not crucified or anything. They still continued to do their science, and there was a respectful, there was some level of respect for scientists. Obviously, this was this didn't go on for the duration of, you know, the Islamic dynasties. There were a lot of instances where people were persecuted for their religious beliefs, not scientific beliefs, mind you, religious beliefs. Yeah, so science had a level of respect, and scientists had respect for religion. So it was possible that, you know, religious scientists could be humble, and, you know, people of religion could be humble in their relation with each other. So we can look at those examples and learn from them, to be civil and to be humble in our relations with each other when it comes to scientists and people of, you know, religion. In the modern world, I think what can be done is scientists should drop, you know, their arrogance, and should also respect religious worldviews. And people of religion at the same time should be respectful of people of no faith and people who rely on science. So on both sides, we need respect and mutual understanding, I think. We should stop categorizing each other, you know. We should stop, oh, this guy, this person is an atheist, so he's godless, so I have nothing to say to him. No, you know, engage with each other based on our common humanity. We're all human. So this understanding of common humanity, this understanding that science, people who believe, who are scientists, have something to say that is useful to us, that is beneficial to society. People of religion may have something to contribute to our humanity. So mutual respect and understanding is the key, I think.
I just want to make one last comment, if I could be
very
allowed.
quickly, Vishal. Very quickly.
Just I don't want to sound audacious, but it's a common misunderstood thing that there was no conflict between Hinduism and Buddhism in ancient India. Actually, it was.
No, I said Indonesia, not India.
Not India. Okay, fine.
Probably, yeah, you know better, but Indonesia, I think there was more peaceful coexistence.
Right, Urusa, you wanted to say something, and then lastly we will go to Junaid from Sri Lanka. He has a question. So Urusa first.
Just about a couple of minutes ago, we were having a discussion about how religions are very rigid and they do not evolve. My issue is with the vocabulary that we are using. What do we mean when we say that religions are not evolving from a certain point of rigidity? What does that evolve mean for you? What is the prototype for you? I mean, probably from Sabiha ma'am's discussion, is she looking up to Saudi Arabia as a prototype? Because then that's I don't know. I do not know what word to use for it. I do not understand what does evolving mean? Because for me, as a practicing Muslim, I understand, probably for me personally, evolving would mean that someday maybe a Muslim sister of mine, or anybody from any religion, a sister probably, I would say that a woman translates Quran for women. Like a feminist perspective of the Quran is out there for us to understand from the woman's perspective, from her opinion. I mean, it will not always be a man's world, obviously. So maybe that is for me, that for me means that we are evolving. But what is the prototype that we are seeing there? Because I see everyone talking about, you know, where religion is rigid, science is rigid, this is rigid, and that is, and Saudi is doing this, Saudi is not doing that. But then is that your prototype? Because if that is your prototype, it is already a very sad world for us then. Because if we are talking about dialogue, if we are trying to establish a premise for us to speak to each other, because we already are from such diverse backgrounds, religious backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, from a lot of diverse backgrounds, I even with people who are from same religious or same cultural backgrounds, our ideas of what evolving means would vary. I think, I don't know, many Muslim women, I would say, would agree with what I said or would disagree with what I said. So we are already having variations in what we mean by evolving. I just find this vocabulary very restricting and very, it just takes away everything from what we are trying to do. I don't know if I've been able to put forth my point, but it just takes away everything from what we are trying to do. I do not understand what someone means when they say that it has not evolved. You know, Islam is like it was 1400 years ago. What is your idea of evolving? What do you want it to come to? What is your point of, you know, saying that, oh, now it has evolved? Like, when will that point come when you will say it has evolved? We all have our own understanding. I have my understanding. Quran is open to interpretation. We do not have a class system. We do not have anyone. The only thing that I find problematic is that it is just men who have translated Quran. That is the only problematic thing with it, I think, I have seen so far, and with my very limited knowledge, I would say. But then I think that is the only problem. But when you say it is not evolving, what are you trying to say? I do not understand that. When anyone says that it has not evolved, what are they trying to say? I find this vocabulary, though it's a very simple word, they're just saying evolve. But what do you mean when you say it has not evolved? What do you want it to become? Or from what point you want it to evolve? What is your prototype? Or what are you looking up to? Are you looking up to Saudi? Are you looking up to Turkey? And now that Turkey has become whatever it has become. Are you looking up to Turkey? Are you looking up to Saudi, Qatar, UAE? What are you looking up to? I mean, it's not a question. It's just an observation, a question that comes to my head every time someone uses that word evolve and rigidity. I just find it very mind-boggling what they mean by that. Haven't been able to understand it so far. Yeah, that's pretty much that.
Dr. Shen, do you want to add something to that? And I think Madam Sabiha Mori also wants to say something. But
I'll just quickly chip in. I won't say much, but yeah, I mean, Mrs. Sabiha has more to say on this topic because I think the question is to her. But I'll just say that in terms of, you know, dialogue between religion and science, both religion and science has a lot to you know, improve, because in terms of how we adapt to, you know, current life, we have to also look at, you know, our traditions and scriptures, but also to the needs of current day. So we have to always be in dialogue with each other. So the ulama, the scholars, should not be in ivory towers. They need to engage with the people. And there are a lot of social issues in the Islamic world. There are a lot of social issues among, you know, people of Hindu faith. There's a lot of social issues in Buddhist countries like Myanmar. So there's always going to be issues. We just need to be aware of them. We just need to address them in a respectful manner, I think.
So one thing I'd like to point out is that I think from my opinion is that we are becoming more cultural and less religious. This is something I've observed in my own society. I'm from Kashmir. It's a majority Muslim state. and my society, I'll take responsibility for that. We are more cultural rather than religious. Whatever we do, our practices with regards to the social practices, they are more inclined towards our culture rather than our religion. So
Right.
I think there is this difference between, again, the same idea of what is our prototype. Because for Kashmiri Muslims, I'll speak, our prototype, I do not think it is the Saudi model. Saudi model, I do not think. I think now it has come to become a prototype after a certain specific political aspect to it. It has come to become a prototype. But earlier times, I think when around the time when conversions in Kashmir started to happen, that wasn't the prototype. I personally do not think that that was the prototype that was looked up to. Like, we were not trying to model ourselves as per the Saudi understanding of Islam. We weren't. I think now, as because of globalization and because of intercultural interactions, interreligious interactions, there has been an influence of the Saudi model. And I'm not able to reconcile with this idea, just like I previously said, that it is more of culture and less of religion. And everything that everyone is trying to point out, like, I think Saif has like constantly built up on this idea of how if religion becomes a part of the dialogue, it takes away from the dialogue. I beg to differ from Saif, because as a research student, I actually with regards to my case study of Jammu and Kashmir, I use religion and culture as an interchangeable term because that is in context of my case study. But for him to be saying that religion takes away everything, because then it only becomes about religion, because that is the premise you are choosing, then don't choose that premise. Believe me, there are so many fault lines in this world. You can have dialogue over so many things. Two people living in two buildings can have dialogue over something that they don't agree with. So don't choose that premise if you do not wish that to become a part of the dialogue. Because if you are choosing that premise, that will become a part of that dialogue. So you are running away from it. Dialogue is not nothing. Religion is not taking anything away from the dialogue. You are running away from the complications that will come up along with it. I think I've said a lot. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, let's quickly give a chance to Mrs. Sabiha More to have a say. And please,
Everybody who's present here, I just want to say it, if I can say louder than this.
We don't have much time.
The prototype that we are talking is I have a prototype. Islam gives me a chance to become a prototype. First thing is there. It is that large and magnanimous as it is. We don't require any model, no Saudi, no Arabia, no nothing. People who stay in Canada or in 5 feet snow cannot think of having a prototype which is there in Arab or which is there in India. So I think my prototype should be me. My prototype should be my understanding. One thing is there, and second is that Islam is evolving or not evolving. I'm not an ulama or a scholar to give a comment on that, but I know for sure that society is evolving, and in the society Islam is there. So evolving of the interpretation is more important than evolving of the text. The text cannot change, I understand. Can we have a better evolution of the interpretation that is associated with the people? So if we have that evolution of interpretation, things will become all right, things will become better, things will become more universal in nature rather than being parochial in their purview. And that is the greatest problem with Islam, because I don't know, sir, whether you have understood. I'm from Uttar Pradesh. I think there are more Muslims in UP than in any part of India, I would say. And our culture is absolutely Sanskritized culture, in which women apply sindoor and they apply bindi and they color their feet because of the Hindu Isation, and they later converted into Islam. So my prototype is me. Why should I follow? Of late, I've seen my mother. Whenever I say Khuda Hafiz, she will say Allah Hafiz, because that's a Saudi prototype. Saudi says, Parsi say Khuda, so we have to say Allah. Nonsense it is. It is absolute nonsense. I've been born and brought up with two Hajis. My grandparents had done Hajj with both. They knew more about Islam than anybody else has taught me through books. I think That is my take on Islam. Islam is, it doesn't need to evolve. It's already, I believe there are a lot of things which are near perfect. I will never say it's perfect, but the only thing is we need to evolve our interpretation, and the prototype has to be me. That will solve a lot of problem. I don't have to imitate anybody, and I'm not Saudi, I'm not Kashmir, I'm not UP. I am me. I should look into my understanding and understand Islam. It's a personal aspect that I must say. Thank you very much for giving that chance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Shen, do you want to say something, or do we move on to the next question, which is from Junaid?
If we still have more people waiting to
One
answer the question.
Yeah, okay. Junaid, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. Can I hear you? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can
Okay.
hear you. Thank you.
Yeah, just I would like to add something else. I mean, just we talk about Sayyid Hussein Nasir, as well David Bohm, regarding the dialogue and science of religion. Actually, there are interconnection in the whole history. You know, the modern world, especially the people who are argue or making debate regarding the dialogue, they are actually then dark regarding the past experience of the religions. For an example, I can say Ibn Khaldun in 12th century, I think, in Muqaddima, their famous book, Muqaddima, they are talking about the evolution theory, especially the science. Ibn Khaldun believed that the humans are the most evolved from the animals, in that they have the ability to the reasons. There are so many things he talking about that. As well as he is talking about the social science. I think the first scholar in the Islamic world, as well as the first book talking about the civilization as well as dialogue in the world. Actually, is talk a lot of things within the connection between the civilization as well as dialogue and science between the regions. So I think the modern world, there are people, especially in the Islamic world, we fail to read about the past experience of Quran, Hadith on the basis of some theologians or scholars' books. We are talking in Arabic that Awraqus Safra, just yellow pages books. Actually, these are the things we have to introduce among the people who has interesting to make peace or to contribute the dialogue between the communities or religion, etc., civilization. So, Doctor, I have a question that how we can encourage the new generation, present generation, to read such kind of the books or such kind of ideas or thoughts in the ground situations.
Right, thank you.
I got it. My question, Doctor?
Yes, I understand, I think, roughly what you're asking. Let's start with your first question. What first thing you discussed? Was it a question, though? Let's start with your second question, and then we can get to the first one. Because I think the way going forward is by having young people engage with these books as much as possible. How do we have them interact with these books? Basically, we can encourage parents to create, whether small or large, doesn't matter, libraries in their homes, and then put these books visible in invisible places where kids, might pick them up. That's how I was brought up. My father used to buy bags of books, and then he would just put them all on the floor. He would tell us to pick what we want to read, and otherwise we can, encourage parents to read to their kids from very young ages. That's how they do in the West. They encourage kids to read from the age 2, 3. Children's books, but kids start to get into the habit of reading, and so that's how we can have young people read Ibn Khaldun's Muqaddimah and learn that he was talking about some kind of evolution, although not exactly the same as Charles Darwin's theory. It is a kind of evolution. So it will open up their minds. It will make them more, appreciative. In terms of the first part of your question, what were you asking exactly? You were saying something about. Could you elaborate your first question, or was it a statement like you were discussing something?
No, just I said that there are no no buffer between the science and religion, especially in root case. Just I am talking that current generation, they fail to understand what's the root case or principles of the religion. That's why now we are thinking that we are trying to divide science separately from the religion. So only the solution that I think we have to introduce basics of that means religious books basics among the new generation, as well as we have to open discussion or dialogue regarding that thoughts on basis of that kind of books. For example, we can say the Ibn Khaldun talk about the dialogue. The basic principle is injustice ruins civilization. So civilization mean he mentioned culture and religious pluralism. So we have to just even the universities as well as some forums or any other organizations, we are talking about the person scholars and their thoughts around the dialogue and civilization and culture. Now we are just we are talking about ultimately the Greek scholars. Why we failed to introduce that mean Gulf-based scholars like Ibn Khaldun as well as Ibn Sina, like that. So we have to identify the mechanism to introduce such kind of theories as well as thoughts among the new generation. That's my ideas. We have to find out the solution. So what is the way to introduce among the new generations?
Right. Thank you for your valuable comments. I think we kind of agree on the same points.
So all right. So with this, we come to the end of today's session. Thank you very much, Dr. Shen, for your wonderful presentation, which obviously stimulated a lively debate. So we look forward to seeing you for at least one more session in the coming weeks. Thank you, everyone,